You guys are awfully chaotic already. Jesus Christ. Hi, everybody. Welcome to the stream. It is episode 4 of Telling Tales, Weaving Worlds, our so far pretty regular stream series on storytelling and world building. So far, so good. You guys have seemed to like this so far, so I think we're going to keep it up. That's my goal anyway. Although next week, per VOD's observation, next week we will not be doing an episode of this because it's the subathon next week. So yeah, we'll talk about that later and deal with that later. Right now, we get bigger and more important things to do. So today, we are going to do something a little different. In the past, we've been talking specifically about storytelling and world building for scripts, stories, books, things that are very passive and very static, things where the writer has complete control over everything that happens and everybody else is just sort of consuming the content in a passive way. Today, though, we've got Lupus with us, and Lupus is very well versed in the world of D&D and is going to talk about more dynamic world building in a situation in which the people that are interacting with the world that you create and the story that you write can fuck it up, and can fuck it up pretty royally. So that is the plan. So let me go grab Lupus and we can start talking. Hello.
Hello.
Okay. So can you guys hear Lupus okay?
Hello, class. I'm going to preface this by saying my tummy hurts, but we're going to do this as best as we can.
Yeah, and if your tummy hurts too much, we can stop. It's okay.
No, I have 4 pages of notes that I've made, and I intend to at least get through them.
Okay. All right. So what can we call you? Professor?
Yeah, so I'll accept Professor or Sir for the duration of this lesson.
Excellent. I think that's fair. I think chat can behave themselves. Everybody get in your seats. This is what, like, you know how when you were a kid and, like, the principal would come observe your class, or, like, some sort of official from the school board would come and just, like, hang out in the back of the room and watch the teacher teach? Be good, please. I don't want any paper airplanes, pencil throwing, tacks on chairs, none of that bullshit. All right, so why don't we start by, Lupus, why don't you tell us a bit about your experience, why you are qualified to speak on this matter?
Okay, good morning, class. My name is Professor Lupus, and I will be going over some of the differences between writing a world for something like a tabletop game or something interactable as opposed to like a linear story. So yes, good morning, class. I expect a good morning back. My name is Lupus, if you don't already know. I've been around Ree's channel a little bit, here or there. So why am I talking about this? A lot of you probably don't know this, but I've actually been doing some sort of D&D or some sort of roleplay for at least over 10 years. Sometimes I'm a player, a lot of the time I'm the DM. I've spent a lot of time just kind of making worlds because it's fun. 2 of the times I was a DM, I made an entire world with like a map and like different kingdoms and like dozens upon dozens of towns with all backstories and stuff like that. I've done that twice just because it's fun. I'll preface this by saying I'm not an expert. I'm probably going to get a lot of things wrong. Despite how structured I've kind of made this, this is not like this is what you have to do. This is not a requirement or anything like that. It's more of a, this is what I've discovered that works for me kind of thing.
Yeah, it's like a your mileage may vary situation.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. Cool.
Yeah, hopefully with this I can at least point some people in the right direction, people who are curious about how to tackle this sort of thing.
Yeah. Also, Vod, thank you so much for the gift subs. That was super sweet. Yeah, because this is an area that I have absolutely no experience in. You know that I am a baby to D&D, and I'm also kind of a control freak. So being able to keep control over my worlds and my stories is the reason why I write all of my own scripts. It's the reason why I, do things the way I do them. And the thought of having people come and fuck with my world in ways that I maybe didn't see coming gives me hives. So, yeah.
It's definitely something you need to understand that it's going to happen. We'll get to that later.
I get that. Okay, so anyway, continue with your with what you wanted to talk about.
I'm just reading the chat, and then the player skipped everything you made. They played 2 sessions, and then we couldn't get another session together, and then it fizzled out.
Oh.
Roughly both times. So yeah, pretty much that. So it just ended up with me building these like really detailed and in-depth worlds for no real reason.
For yourself. You built them for yourself because you liked
for
it.
funsies.
Yeah.
So one of the things I like to do before I sort of talk about things like this is state my intention and purpose, just so we kind of all understand what I'm trying to convey to you guys and what I hope you guys will have by the end of it. And if you do, then I've done my job right. So my intentions for the lesson, and I use the word lesson very loosely here, is to try and answer some questions that I feel are prudent to world building in a D&D/tabletop environment. You'll also note that it bleeds into other things too. The sort of things that I'm going to bring up here don't just fall in line with D&D or like tabletop games like Pathfinder and stuff like that. You'll find that a lot of it can be transferred into things like roleplay or like VR chat roleplay. I know a lot of you guys watch like FT and Blackwell and stuff like that. But you can see a lot of that is transferable between that. But in this session, hopefully I've answered these questions to a satisfactory standard. The main points I'm going to be focusing on today are: why is world building for D&D and tabletop games different from general story world building? And I'm going to go over some tips to help create a believable and enjoyable world for players. And it's sprinkled in and out, and at the end I'm sure we'll have like a Q&A where we can answer some questions.
Yeah, for sure. Because chat's usually good about having some good questions. Hi Halo, welcome.
Yeah, and hopefully I can kind of go off on a tangent a little bit, because this is very structured for me.
No, you should, definitely. And again, if you guys have questions as we go along, if something doesn't make sense, or if you just want some clarification, or if you want a story related to something, Lupus has been doing this long enough. He's got stories for most of these things he's going to be talking about. And I've got questions too, because I am dumb and don't know what this is like. So yeah, please be dynamic. Tell us what you want to talk about. Tell us what you want more clarification on. Ask your questions. That is what we are here for. This is not just like a podcast where we talk at you. This is interactive, and you guys are always so good about that. Case in point, Fuzz Stumps. So, take it away.
Fuzz Stumps?
That was the storytelling last week where they helped me write a script, and they were adamant that we use the phrase Fuzz Stumps for little baby horns. You know, little fuzz stumps.
That's really good, actually.
Well, they're in the audio now, so congratulations, guys. You got your way. You got your fuzz stumps. Yes, you did. It's live right now. Enjoy. All right. Now you may have the floor.
A giraffe's horns?
Yeah, well, sort of. Yeah, but even like baby antlers, when like a deer is sprouting baby antlers, like it always starts as little fuzzy stumps, you know, little tiny fuzzy stumps. So that was the monster listener had little tiny fuzzy stumps that he needed to cover with his hair at the start of the audio. So that's why Fuzz Stumps became a thing. And they really latched onto that, though. Like, it's amazing the things that you guys...
I like Fuzz Stumps.
Fuzz Stumps. Yeah, I'm glad you guys liked how it turned out. You crafted that. You came up with the idea of the monsters on the train platform. And although I feel like somebody didn't get the memo on what train platform is, because somebody commented on that audio, what game platform are we talking about? And yeah, so that I'm sorry, that person. It's for trains. I'm sorry. It's not like your PS5 or something, but
Someone hasn't watched Harry Potter.
Yeah, platform 9 3/4, exactly. But
so
yeah.
Is that like a Mac or a PlayStation or?
It's Unix. It's a Unix machine. I'm in.
Unix.
You know, like Jurassic Park? Wasn't it Jurassic Park where the little girl was like, "This is Unix. I know this."
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Anyway. Yeah. All right, anyway, so you guys got your way. We got your Fuzz Stumps. You got that out of your system. Now you can sit quietly and listen to Professor Lupus and not throw things, okay? Okay.
All right.
Take it away, Prof.
Right, that's me, Prof. So, for some notes, please note that for brevity's sake, I'm going to be saying D&D as the primary example here. But these points are also relevant to other tabletop games like Call of Cthulhu, Pathfinder, and other tabletop RPG games. It's not limited to the D&D sphere and that sort of stuff. Like I said before, I feel like it's relevant to mention that a lot of these points will also be relevant to VR chat RPs. So if you like ND, FT, Aether, and all that stuff, you find that a lot of this overlaps in some of these points as with D&D. This is general world building for a interactable environment and why it's different than like a more linear story.
Yeah. And boy,
Next
is it
slide,
different.
please.
We didn't make slides for this. Oh, click.
Thank you.
Okay.
So, why is world building for D&D and other tabletop games different from general story world building? Next slide, please.
Click.
Wow, that one sounded more passive aggressive than the last one.
Click.
Much better.
Okay.
We'll go back because you've pressed it twice now.
Oh, okay. Back click.
Okay, so what do I mean by general story world building for the purpose of this talk? When I say general story world building, I'm referring to things like books, stories, audios, movies, the sort of linear sort of stuff that I think Ree's more familiar with than I am.
Yeah. Yeah, the stuff you can't fuck with as a reader or a consumer of the product. You just enjoy it as it is, created entirely by the author. And, I mean, the closest thing would be a choose your own adventure, but even that is controlled by the author. So, yeah, you cannot fuck with these worlds.
Hit me with those goosebumps, boy. So the main thing that I think is different is control. I think that's the main sort of thing we're going for here. When you're writing stories, you get the ability to control the reader's experience. You can take them on these amazing, long-winding adventures with deep lore and lovable characters. You can be incredibly descriptive about specific things that you want to show them. But you're the one presenting that to them. With D&D and other tabletop games and role-playing games and things like that, you have to be able to back off a little bit. You have to be able to take your hand off the wheel and give up control in favor of player agency. This can be a double-edged sword. I mean, it's great that your players can walk around freely in this world and experience things themselves, find secrets that aren't handed to them, as you would in a regular sort of story. And they feel like they're really a part of the world, because really they are. However, this also means that they are untethered. They can go anywhere and do anything within reason, but you get the point I'm trying to make.
Yeah. Yeah, I do.
Because of this, you, as the DM/world builder, have to be ready for this. You have to understand that this medium and the type of world building that you're doing here has to allow players to be able to do their own things and make their own decisions. That's the essence of the point I'm trying to make. While general world building is great for stories, the readers will where the still waking up. Where the readers will be, and you can pick and choose what to show them and what not to show them. You have full control over the experience, and because of this, you can carefully craft and tailor what you present to them, and hopefully make a more refined product for your readers to experience. So think like when you're making a movie, and those movie sets that are just a blank sort of like wall or like an empty building or something like that. Mm-hmm. You can make this outside of the building and make it like really fit and really blend in with the entire world, and it can be this really amazing thing. You can spend a lot of time and detail on that, but inside it is empty because you're not expecting people to look in there. When you're building for like world building for like D&D and tabletop and roleplay and things like that, you have to fill the building, is the point that I'm making. And sometimes that can mean that the overall quality of everything is just a little bit lower because you can't spend the same amount of time as you normally would in a story on every single bit that you expect the players to look at. You just can't. There's too much. You can't name every household on the street. It just takes too much time. So when you build for a tabletop game like D&D, you do so with the understanding that you have to give up some control. It's very hard to carefully craft and tailor an experience on that level, because you run the risk of your players going off on a tangent. Like was mentioned in chat before, sometimes you can spend a lot of time building something that you expect the players to go into, and they just don't. They go off on a complete other tangent, and
that would frustrate the shit out of me.
It's part of it, but you can't force them, because then what's the point of doing a tabletop game kind of thing? It kind of becomes railroady. And for those of you that don't know, railroading is where the DM is more or less laying out the direct story of where they want the players to be. Whereas a sandbox is more, the players can just kind of go and experience their own thing, and the DM just kind of explains what's happening around them. If that makes sense.
Yeah, so railroading. Yeah, railroading is laying the track in one direction and basically forcing everybody along that track, whether they want to go or not. It's just, this is the only direction there is. You will take it, kind of thing. Whereas sandbox, you've built more of the world, and it's okay if they don't experience all of it, because it's up to them where they go.
Yeah.
Okay.
There's a little bit of a stigma against railroading. Some people will tell you that it's not really in the spirit of D&D, and I agree to an extent. There are still amazing things you can do while railroading your players. You can, like we're coming back to what I was saying earlier, you can perfectly craft exactly where you want them to be and what you want them to experience, and you can make this really amazing story that way. But you do so by giving up player agency. So it's a trade-off, really. On the flip side of that, you can make something that, in a sandboxy type, you can make some things that you think are really cool, and the players can either completely ignore it or just completely fuck it up. There was this D&D game that I was watching one time on YouTube, and it was in like the first couple of episodes, and the party had came across this orb, this like magic crystal ball, this orb kind of thing, and they were like, oh, this is kind of cool, what if we like sell it? They wanted to make some money from it. So like, okay, we go down to like the local trinkets shop, and they're trying to sell this crystal orb, and they're trying to explain to the guy who runs the store, no, this is magical, it's like, it's like pure glass or whatever. And the store owner's like, yeah, whatever, I don't believe you. And they're like, look, I'll show you. So they dropped the orb from shoulder height onto the floor, and the orb shatters into like 1,000 pieces, and they're like, oh, well, that kind of sucked. And the shop owner's like, yeah, well, obviously I'm not going to buy it. I'm like, okay, whatever. And they carried on. At the end of this campaign, so this is like, hundreds of episodes later, they were doing a Q&A with the people that watched the stream and the videos. And people were like, what's the deal with the orb, like right at the start? And the DM was like, the entire plot revolved around that orb.
Oh no.
The entire main overarching story that they were ready to present and they had written out revolved around this orb being the linchpin of all of it.
And the
players dropped it and broke it right off the bat. So immediately it was like pages of information out the window.
Oh my God. I would lose my shit. I would be like, we're starting over. Everybody back to first positions. Fuck all of you. We're starting over. Like, oh man.
Thus spawned the term dropping the orb.
Dropping the orb.
So when your party drops the orb, that's, yeah.
You throw all of your notes out the window and start from scratch on the story, because none of that matters now. God
and it will
damn.
happen. Unless you like railroad it hard, that will happen like every single time. I was doing a campaign where a bunch of my players went to this like abandoned coastal city, and they spent like 4 days walking there, and they saved this city or whatever. They did what they needed to do there, and at the end of the session I was like, okay, because I'm trying to do like a free-flowing kind of sandboxy kind of world. And I'm like, okay, just so I have some sort of, bearing on what you guys are going to do, what's the plan for, like, the next session? And they're like, oh, well, we're probably going to walk back to the main city that we're in. We're going to take that 4-day journey back along the road. And I'm like, oh, okay, cool. So I plan all of this out for the next session. We get into the next session, and they're like, hey, we've decided we're actually going to take a boat. We're going to go down to the docks, and we're going to take a boat, and we're going to... So I planned for, like, this big 4-day journey with all of these encounters and things like that. And the players are like, yeah, we're going to take a boat instead. We're going to, like, pilot a ship. So I'm like, fuck, I need to now make, sea encounters and stuff like that off the cuff of my head.
Oh my god. I would be like, nope, sorry, the boats are all broken. Isn't that terrible? Anyway, get back on the road. Get the fuck back on the road.
They ended up going to the docks, and they got onto a boat that was working, and I was like, right, who can skipper a boat? And everyone was like, not me.
Oh, they did not think it through. Oh no. I guess you're
they
walking,
ended up walking
bitches.
anyway.
Yeah.
And that brings me into there are tips and tricks you can use to kind of nudge players into the intended path, but unlike general writing, you can't pick them up and put them in the right area, kind of thing. So,
but I think it's kind of genius to ask them who can drive a boat, because it seems like they didn't really think that all the way through, and then as soon as you ask that, it's like, oh. Yeah, but the fact that you were quick enough on your feet to ask them that, as opposed to being like, well, shit, now I've got to come up with a megalodon and a sea monster and nope, just nobody here can drive a boat. Isn't that a shame? Anyway.
Yeah.
God damn. Jesus Christ.
This is why DMs develop these binders full of crap that players never to use, because they have to have something to use when it goes to shit, because player agency. Yeah. Player agency is a wonderful... terrible thing.
I like Alistair's suggestion. Miraculously, another orb. Wow.
You want to do that. It's so hard to be like, nah, the orb bounces and it's fine, or all the boats are broken, or something like that. For me, that becomes a little railroady.
Yeah, it is.
Because it's like, would the orb bounce and break?
No,
Probably not.
It would break.
Would all the ships be broken? Probably not.
Maybe there's a hurricane. Yeah, a terrible one.
You got to be quick on your feet as a DM. You got to either be quick on your feet or really good at planning.
The decoy. That's right. It was a decoy orb. It was a test to see what they would do with it, and they failed. Real orb is not pleased. Yeah. Jesus Christ, the decoy orb. It was a mimic. It's not even an orb, and it's a good thing that you dropped it. Yay! Go team.
Another story. I was oh god. So the players were fighting this assassin. Sorry, I had to clear my nose.
It's fine.
They were fighting this assassin, and this assassin had poison on their blade, and the poison paralyzed the people that they hit if they failed on a DC save. Right.
Right.
It's cool. So they wrecked this assassin. They killed this assassin, and they looted the corpse, as players do with everything. Always expect whatever your baddie is carrying, the players will eventually have. They looted the corpse, and they found a bottle of poison that this assassin had, and they kept it. Okay, cool. A couple sessions down the line, I set up this big baddie fight with this witch in the woods who was like a hag. It was supposed to be this big fight, like one of a proper like boss battle kind of thing. And the ranger goes, okay, I dip my arrow into the poison and I shoot the witch with it. Okay,
the
sure.
the poison for the
Roll
witch.
the dice.
The witch is poisoned.
Roll the dice, and yep, witch is paralyzed.
Oh no!
And he's like, I walk over to the witch, and I kill her. And I'm like, well, she's incapacitated, so yeah, congratulations. Screws up ball of paper, throws it in the bin. You guys killed the witch. Well done.
That was the shortest session ever. Go team.
Yeah.
Jesus Christ. Oh, I'd be so annoyed. My eyes kind of twitching hearing some of these stories because it's like, oh, fuck you. Just fuck you. Like, so much work goes into planning these battles and these scenarios and stuff, and then fuck you. Just
on the flip side, it's so hard to gauge like what your players are going to do. Sometimes I fully expect them to, like, writing puzzles for like for dungeons and things like that. There's like a puzzle that you have to do to get through. It's so hard because like I write these puzzles and I'm like, oh, this will make them scratch their heads for a little bit, and they walk in there and like, oh yeah, this is blah 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 blah, blah, and they roll right through it. But other ones I make very simple, and they just don't get it.
And you're like, guys, come on.
I made this one room that was a big open chamber, and there was 3 or 4 pedestals on the chamber, and in each one of those pedestals was an orb.
Orbs.
Like a snow globe. And in each one of those was something different. It was like a sun, a rain, a tree without leaves, and a snowflake, right? And they were in like a random order, and the idea was that you needed to put them in order to unlock the door, right? So the idea is that it was sunny, then it rains, and then the tree falls the leaves, and then it's like this is the seasons, right? It's getting colder, basically is the point. And they just couldn't get it. So, and every time they got it wrong, they were blasted with like, I think it was like 1d6 ice damage or something like that. So they couldn't just, the idea is so they had to sit there and work it out. So the barbarian walks up with like frost resistance and a shitload of health and just brute forces it.
Oh.
For like 10 minutes. Just sits there trying different combinations. I'm like, no, you take damage. No, you take damage. No, you take damage. Oh, you actually got it.
Oh my god. I mean, tank the puzzle, I guess, if it comes to that. Yes. But Jesus Christ, what a weird...
The Barb tanked my puzzle.
Barb tanked your puzzle. I picture this enormous man wearing like fur, sitting on the floor, just putting these little pieces in order, and something is like wailing on his back, and he's like, not yet, not yet, not yet. It's like, Jesus Christ.
In that same session, there was it was another puzzle in that chamber actually. The entire room had these different large chalices in them, and some of them were filled with water and some of them weren't. And the idea is that like you want to try and balance it, so you need to have the same amount of water on each side of the room, and then the door will open, right? And in that room was this urn, and the urn was a refilling urn, so they tip out the water into the cup, right? And then they take the urn back, and it has more water in it, right? It refills itself. And that was so that they didn't run out of water, they could complete the puzzle kind of thing. The players were like, guys, if we take this urn and we just keep flipping it over and over and over again, we could drown the earth.
What? That's where they went with it?
They were like, I want to take this urn out of the chamber and start like having endless supplies of water.
What?
And so I had to be like, actually it doesn't work when you leave the chamber.
That would be exactly, nope, sorry, take it out of the chamber and it breaks. Aw. Because what the fuck? Like, what? Children. Like, Jesus Christ.
You have to, anything that can be abused will be abused.
Although I like Alistair's story about the DM bringing in a paper shredder and just every so often just put a piece of paper in it like, well, you guys fucked that up. Like...
I like that.
I love that so much. Like, goddamn. Never-ending water is worth a lot. I mean, yeah, but... the spirit of the game, the puzzle to solve, like... I guess if you've played it long enough, you start keeping an eye out for those incredibly overpowered items that could be useful later, and...
Well, this was like their first, like, proper campaign.
Really? Holy shit.
Yeah. I was playing with a guy who had never really done D&D before, but played a lot of Skyrim and Fallout and those sort of games. So every single time they fought any enemy ever, anytime there was a corpse, looted. To the point where that city that they went to, that they had like the abandoned city, there's like these like quote unquote zombies like roaming the streets at night or whatever.
Yeah.
And this guy's like, I want to sneak out at nighttime and just kind of loot the bodies of the soldiers that are around and see if I can find some swords or whatever. And I'm like, all right. So he goes out there and he picks up like 5 or 6 swords.
Oh my god. Oh my god. Just wow. Okay. All right. That's loot goblins.
Loot
exactly.
Goblins. He was the only person in the party that was doing it, and I was toying with the idea of giving him a cursed item just to like punish him for doing that. But I got the lesson across when he took those 6 swords back to the main city and tried to sell them to the blacksmith. And so the blacksmith was like, these swords are like rusted and like got like bit chunks missing out of them because they've been fighting recently and stuff like that. I'll give you like 2 copper per sword.
Suck it,
he's
man.
Like, are you serious? Yeah.
Winter Panda, thank you so much. 25 months. Holy shit. I can't believe you've been here this long either. Why? Why are you here this long? Why are any of you here this long? Anyway. Yeah, So here's a mechanics question for you then. When he's got 6 swords, that affects the weight that he can carry, right? Was that pretty much all he could carry?
I ran my sessions a little differently because I don't like having to keep track of the weight of everything that everyone is carrying.
That's
because
fair.
This is before like, D&D Beyond and auto tracking weight and stuff like that.
Yeah.
And I didn't want to have to, every time they got gold, I didn't want to have to add that to their weight value and stuff like that.
Yeah.
So the way I did it, I was like, if you could feasibly carry it on your body or fit it in your backpack, go for it.
Okay.
And so he's like, well, I just strap it to the side of my backpack and this and that and all that. And I'm like, all right, you now have 6 fucking swords.
So he's lumbering down the road like a goddamn porcupine, just swords sticking out all over. Yep. Okay, that's fair.
I think he was a dwarf as well.
Oh no.
So he was like, tiny.
Oh, that's adorable. No, the visuals that are coming with this are great. Like, I kind of picture you in like
they're good
this
stories.
like but like I picture you sort of hovering above the chamber with the chalices and being like, here they go, they're gonna start measuring water, and they're like, let's take it, let's take it, and you're like, fuck, what no.
My favorite bit was the aha moment where they're like, I pour out the chalice into this cup, and I'm like, okay, and they're like, oh shit, we wasted it. Well, I look into the urn, and it's like, yeah, there's more water in there, and they're like,
it makes more water.
We could drown the earth. I'm like, oh no, what have I done?
We could drown who goes right to drown the earth and not something like, we can solve drought and we can like make sure nobody's ever thirsty again. No, drown the fucking earth. Like, what the? Okay. Oh my god.
But these are all examples of the double-edged sword, one of 6 player agency things that can happen. So you have to be prepared for that. Either be really quick on your feet, or kind of have enough prepared that it's you can make it believable. Have a couple notes on hand. One of the good tricks as a DM is to have like a list of names and the races of those names that are associated. Because if you're this is a free. We're not even in the tips and tricks section. This is a free one. Have like a list of names for whatever race it is, like dwarf names, human names, male and female, and that sort of stuff. Because I fucking guarantee you, your players at some point will be like, I go to house number 7 on this road, and I knock on the door, and I ask who's there, and I want to know their name. And you have that name on standby, like on standby.
Jesus Christ! And they just do that to fuck with you.
Not well, I mean, some people do, but not necessarily. It's stuff like, oh, you're in a tavern and there's a few people around it. And he's like, oh, okay, I go up to this person. Hello, sir. What's your name? And suddenly you have to have a name for someone you didn't expect to have a name. So just
having a list of names handy,
yeah.
and races and like brief descriptions and yeah. Okay, interesting.
So yeah, just like planning but not over planning, right? Having stuff prepared but not
having that ready, but being ready to never use it, basically. Okay, interesting. That's very, very dynamic. Because if I take the time to develop like names and personalities and stuff for characters, I want to use them. Like at that point, I want people to ask. Like I want to find a way to shoehorn them into the story somehow because I spent all that time making a character and I like it and I'm attached to it. Like it's my child and I want it to do stuff. And if they never ask it a question, like.
Yeah. There, like I'm saying, there are ways to kind of nudge players into it and stuff like that. But if they're actively resisting it, you can't force it because then it just feels, it feels weird for the players. It feels like they don't have any real sort of agents.
Yeah, I get that. Yeah, but still,
and that comes with experience.
Yeah. So, like, have you had that situation where you've had to have a random name just ready for somebody to talk to?
Yeah.
Okay, and then
every DM will have it happen to them.
But did you then circle back and include that character somewhere else? Like, did you turn it into like a planting and payoff situation, or did you just say fuck it, that guy's never going to be seen again?
It depends. I mean, yeah, I've done both. I mean, the likelihood of them finding the random guy at the tavern again, especially if they're traveling something, is low. But that actually kind of comes into one of my points that I'm going to make here, actually.
Okay, well, Chris has a question real quick. Do you ever recycle characters that you planned but never used, and then use them later?
All the time.
All the time. Okay.
Yeah. You've done the work. No one's seen it. No one will know. So just bring them back in.
Okay.
That's cool. Same thing with I've done this big world building thing, and I've made this map, and I've made these towns, and these. Each of these towns has someone who runs them, and they have a family. So, you put all this work and stuff, and they do like 2 sessions, and then they're like, yeah, it kind of fizzles out. I still have all those files.
Yeah.
So if I ever need to run a D&D campaign, guess where they're gonna fucking be? In the spot that I spent hours playing, planning and stuff like that. Because I have that. It's easier that way.
Yeah. Oh, that's a good question. Have you ever made a character for a minor role, but then had them be important to the plot?
Yeah, it happens. I can't think off the top of my head, but it definitely. I mean, you can see it in other D&D campaigns that you play, that you see like Critical Role and things like that. There are players there that are like, you expect it to be a one-off character, like some random person, say someone random in the tavern or whatever.
Yeah. And
then they leave to do their mission, and like a couple sessions later, they come back and like, I want to go to the tavern and see if Jason Smith is still there. And you're like, fuck, who the fuck was that again? Because they remember.
Yeah.
You might not, but they remember.
So you really need to keep pretty detailed notes on your random one-off characters that you introduce because, yeah, it's just one of many for you, but for the players, it's somebody they interacted with and they want to see that person again.
Yeah.
So, yeah. Cool. Interesting. How do you withhold pettiness? That would be my struggle. I would be so tempted to wipe out the party with some ridiculously overpowered big bad if they didn't do the things that I wanted them to do. Like I probably wouldn't. But, yeah, honestly, like I wouldn't do it. But man, the urge would be strong if they were going so far off book for me, and I was sitting there like crinkling papers in my hands, like, well, that didn't work. Like, guess what, guys? It's a rock slide. Oh my god, it's been so wet lately.
The thing is, though, wherever they are is on book.
Yeah, that's true.
You aren't. The story isn't what you as the DM make. The story is where the characters are, right?
Yeah.
The scope is different. It's and that's something it can be really hard to kind of understand.
I mean,
because
at the end of the day, the DM's not telling the story. The players are the ones telling the story, and that's, like you said, giving up the control and letting them have the agency. Like you're building the world, but they're telling the story. And it's a group effort, and I'm real bad at group efforts. So
I've done the made a character for a minor role, but make it be important to the plot. I've done that with an item before.
With an item?
Yeah.
Was it an orb?
So they were... No.
Okay.
They were fighting goblins. Random encounter. You know, I don't really think too much about this because I'm like, okay, we need some sort of combat. I'm just gonna throw, 3 or 4 goblins at them, just to kind of, And so they killed the goblins, and they're like, okay, I loot the goblins. I'm like, shit. Okay, well, you find a bit of copper, and just to make it interesting, I rolled on a table of random loot. So people in the past have like set up like loot tables. So it's just a list of random items. You roll a dice, and it will tell you what item it is.
Okay.
And I was like, okay, I'll roll it, and see what it is. Oh, okay. It is a book that holds no ink. That is all that was told.
A book that holds... You mean if you try to write in it, nothing happens? Like it just stays blank?
Whatever you perceive that to be. So that's all that was given to me. And I'm like, okay, congratulations. Party, you have this book. And they're like, oh, okay. And like 3 sessions later, they're like, shit, we need something to write on. We'll take the book out. And I'm like, I remember this. Yeah, the book doesn't hold any ink. We write in it, and it just disappears. Like, holy shit. This must be really powerful item. Maybe it's talking to someone on the other side of the world. Maybe it's... And I'm like, oh
no. Okay. Thank you for the follow. Time to scan some goons with my inkless book. Jesus Christ. So how did you make it matter?
I
Oh no.
I went with what they suggested.
What?
I wasn't expecting this book to be anything. And they're like, oh, well, when I write in it, think of the journal in Harry Potter.
I was just thinking that, the Tom Riddle journal. Yeah.
Yeah, the Tom Riddle journal. They're like, when I write in it, it all vanishes after a second. Do you think it's like talking to someone? And I'm like, that's a great idea. And so in my head, they wrote something. Like, this is stupid. And they closed the book. And the next time they opened it, it said something to them.
Oh.
And it just became this,
Interesting. And you could have kept it simple. When you said inkless book, it could have been, other materials would work. Like if you want to write in charcoal or blood or something. Like that would work, just not ink.
Exactly.
But they decided to go to the Tom Riddle conclusion, and you're like, yeah, sure, why not? So, geez, that's... Yeah. And then did you just built lore around that for the next time?
Yeah, but then the game fizzled out pretty quickly after that, so it didn't really...
Oh, it appears a distant party has decided to drown the world. Honestly, like...
Welcome to Boat Wars.
No, not Boat Wars. I can't drive a boat. Nobody in this party can drive a boat.
It's 50 years in the future. The barbarian's been sitting there turning this urn upside down for 30 years.
Oh no, fuck.
Sea level has risen by 8 meters.
Nope. Honestly, that would be great, but nope. I love the combination of that plus the whole none of us can drive a boat thing. It's perfect. It's perfect. Like, you drown the world if you want, but how will you get around, you idiots? Jesus Christ.
It was so good. They went to the docks. They got on this boat. I'm like, yeah, it's a little scratchy, but you reckon it's seaworthy. And they get on there. I'm like, right, so who can pilot a boat? And they're all like, so we get off the boat.
So wait, now, if they wanted to pursue that, is like for something like driving a boat, how... Like, is that a skill that can be learned in-game, or is that something that has to be done? Okay.
There are certain skills, well, this is more like gameplay mechanics, but there are certain things that stop everyone from being able to do everything, or one person being able to do everything kind of thing. And for me, I was like, well, who's, like, been around boats? Who would actually make sense to have been around boats? The person who was raised as a farmer and never seen the ocean, a dwarf who's been underground and not been on boats before in his life, that sort of stuff. I'm like, it doesn't really make sense. So I'm like, okay, do you guys think any of your characters would know how to, like, pilot a boat? And this wasn't a rowboat. This was with, like, sails and stuff.
Yeah, I was thinking like a big boat with masts and stuff.
Yeah. And they're like, probably not. I'm like, well, there you go.
Yeah, I mean, let them come to that conclusion. But then could they learn in game at some point if they wanted to?
Yeah,
Could one of them pick up that skill? Okay.
Oh, man, that was really weird. Well, I'm in this town now that's a seafaring city. I'm going to go talk to a boat captain and see if he can teach me. And obviously that takes time and and that sort of stuff. But that's something that they can do. That's totally something that, they can learn and pick up and becomes a skill.
I had a monk character who suddenly gained the ability to sail once I remembered he was from an island. Yeah, I mean, if you know your own backstory.
Well, it makes sense. Yeah.
That makes sense.
They were in this cabin in the woods, and they were in the basement. And the owner of the cabin, who they were chasing after, came back and realized his hideout had been invaded. Mm-hmm. So he set the house on fire.
Oh my god!
And they're all in the basement as the upper floors are burning.
Oh god!
And they're like, "Shit, we can't get out. We're stuck in the basement." And I had a dwarf and a tiefling in this party. And the dwarf is like, this shows the ingenuity. Mm-hmm. Is that a word?
Yeah, ingenuity.
It shows the ingenuity that players can have here. The dwarf goes, well, what are the walls made out of? And I'm like, well, it's like cobblestone kind of thing. It's a dank basement. It's like loose cobblestone, stuff like that. The dwarf is like, hey, can I dig out from underneath the basement?
Yeah.
And I'm like, yeah, probably could. It might take a while though, and the flames are burning up, the roof above you essentially. He's like, shit, okay. And the tiefling is like, can I use thaumaturgy to dim the flames a little bit before we make our dash over them? And I'm like, fuck, yes, perfect. That works so well. That's amazing. Yeah, and so it just shows like they can be really smart or very dumb sometimes.
Honestly, that's clever. I like that. Yeah. So they all just jumped the flames and ran out, kind of thing.
The tiefling cast thaumaturgy and dimmed the flames in a sort of area. The rogue kind of bounced between furniture and went out the door. The barbarian or dwarf, I can't remember what it was at the time, wrapped themselves up in a cloak and ran through it. And the tiefling has fire resistance, I think, so they were okay. Yes, they made it out.
Nice. Interesting. Okay, yeah, that's... I had that digging out thought, actually, when you said dwarf. I was like, he could dig them out. That's, makes perfect sense. Although I guess it would take a while to dig completely out of a basement. Yeah, that's... Huh.
My favorite thing is when characters are so, or players are so in touch with their characters, and you're describing something to them, and there's a secret to it. I remember I was describing some ruins, they got weird carvings and things like that. Mm-hmm. They're weirdly good carvings, and the dwarf is like, well, I mean, I'm a dwarf and I have a stone cutting knowledge, so tell me about would I know anything about this? And I love that because it's it makes sense for my character to and I have the thing on my sheet and stuff, and I was like, I like that stuff.
Hydrate. Yes, it is a good time to hydrate. You better take a sip of your coffee. Yeah.
Yeah.
I like that.
Yeah, that was a bit of a tangent.
Did you see Chris's thing about hypnotizing a pointless character that still had nothing important to say? I kind of love that. I love spending all that time on somebody that doesn't matter.
Yep. Yeah. Oh, that's good, yeah. Because you can be like, oh, yeah, it doesn't look like this guy really knows anything. Or you can just be like, hey, you guys make your own decisions, and I'll tell you what happens. And it can go off.
See, that almost sounds fun, messing with an anthill. Just, you guys do what you want, bye-bye. And then you're pouring acid over here and lighting a fire over here. And
well, that's what it's like. It's those sandboxy kind of games, like The Sims, right? So you build a house in The Sims, and then you let them kind of go on free play. That's basically what it is. You set this world up for them, and then they can interact with it, kind of thing.
Huh. Interesting. So Vod wants to know if you if you have the accents and in character thing going on constantly, or if it's not that.
When you work with your character fit them in a world and you go for accents and in character chat all the time. Some DMs are like, you know, I want you to be in character the entire time or something like that. For me, it's kind of like, yeah, we can discuss it out of character a bit, but when
you take your action or when you do something as your character, you should probably be that.
When I play like Karthus or something in Dragon's Wings, I'll talk like out of character because you know, if I make a joke or something that's like not in character, I'll make it clear that I'm not saying it in character because I don't use my accent. But if it's something like in character that's like Karthus is saying, then I use my my actual accent.
Yeah, your Karthus accent.
The issue that sometimes pops up when you're DMing and people are talking like out of character about like what to do or something. Like let's say you're at a banquet and the guy who's like the lord who's like running the banquet is suspected to be evil. You guys know he's evil or something like that. And all the player characters are sitting there and the evil guy is right there, right? And out of character, the players are like, what do you guys think we should do? Should we like kill him? Should we like, you know, maybe we shouldn't drink the wine or something like that? You know, if people do that, then it's kind of like, you should be saying this in character.
Yeah, that's an in-character conversation. Yeah.
And the best thing to do is, in that situation, like, when they're there and they're talking and they think they're out of character, like, oh, maybe we shouldn't try the wine. Then in character as the DM, I'm like, as the Lord, I'm like, why wouldn't you try my wine? You know.
I can hear you dumbasses.
Yeah, I can hear you. You're right 2 feet away from me, and everyone's like, oh, that wasn't in character. I'm like, well, sucks for you.
Yeah, if you're having an in-character conversation, yeah, exactly. Like if you're asking about the mechanics of the game or asking, oh, can I roll for this or can I? Yeah, that's one thing. But if you're having a conversation between characters, it just makes sense for that to be in character. So yeah, makes perfect sense. So. We have a question. Have you ever had the bad guy spared only for them to be part of the party?
I've not, but I've seen it happen before. Yeah, I mean, that's totally possible.
And it's not a player character, though. That's like an NPC that joins up.
Yeah.
Yeah, okay.
That's cool. You can do that. You can have... I remember this one campaign I was watching where they had... they were doing like a mission for this priest. Who was like, the priest was a little slow, okay? He was very old, very slow, and not, think like Hunchback of Notre Dame. Okay. And it was kind of like, they were kind of like taking pity on him, kind of thing, and they were like, out of character, were making fun because, you know, haha, funny voice and that sort of stuff. And later on, they came across the big baddie. And he's like, I need a minion. I want you to go find someone to, you know, like, that I can brainwash and become my minion. And like, oh, we'll just go find that weird priest. That'd be funny. And like, down the line, they meet up with the big baddie again, and the priest is there, and he's been brainwashed, and he turns into the bad guy. He's like one of the bad guys now, because they chose to make him, you know, like that. So, it can go either way.
Interesting. And creative.
Yeah.
I know we're still kind of off track, but Bod's got a question. Ever seen any campaigns where there are 2 groups of player characters?
Yeah, that's actually Dragon's Wings.
Yeah, that's Dragon's Wings. But I mean, they're not usually on at the same time, but yeah.
So that is called Living World campaign, which means that the world is there, and the different groups of players and stuff, they go at different times, and it'll impact the world, like, around them.
Yeah, I think the way Tham put it was, if one group sets a field on fire, then the next group that comes through that field is burned, and that's just how it is, because that field got burned in the last session.
Yeah, think like an MMO versus an RPG.
Yeah. Yeah, which I like.
World.
I like that, because then, yeah, people can influence the world and influence things in it, but still have their own adventures and their own, you know, experiences. Were you evil trying to stop the heroes? I mean, I guess that depends on perspective. The goblins probably think you suck.
Evil campaigns are a thing.
Yeah?
People will sit down and be like, all right, we're going to be evil. You guys are going to be baddies. I remember hearing a story about a DM who was, well, he wasn't DMing at the time, but he was part of this party, and they sat down like, all right, we're going to run an evil campaign. And I was like, cool, we're going to make like, evil characters, and we're going to be, bad and all that stuff. And they got to the final fight, and he was explaining that they were kind of losing, so his character just turned and ran. He just left to save himself, and it ended up in the death of the rest of the party.
Oh my god.
And they were like, what the fuck? Why did you leave? And he's like, my character's evil. He doesn't care about you guys, And everyone's like, shit, that makes sense.
That's in character for an evil character, yeah.
Evil campaigns can be fun, but you have to be like proper evil if you're gonna do it, or at least be on the same page of evilness, like.
Which, I mean, that sounds like there'd be a lot of backstabbing, not trusting each other. Just like the party chemistry would be so different if everybody was just in it for themselves and kind of shitty. So
that's what it should be, yeah.
Yeah, it should be. Yeah, they shouldn't have any sort of loyalty to each other or anything like that. They're evil. So yeah.
Wait, what does that mean? Same group of players playing different characters, or on different days, or two different groups of players? Yeah. So in Dragon's Wings, there's how many players?
Like 100 people now.
There's easily over 100 players.
Yeah.
In Dragon's Wings,
and they're not all active. They're not
five
active,
DMs
but
or something like that. So everyone has different characters that they play, and usually you kind of form up into groups. So it's not necessarily just one person playing multiple characters. It's actually like 100 players playing different characters in there.
Yeah, like some people have more than one character that they play, but they won't necessarily play them back to back or anything like that. But yeah, they'll just like post a quest, and anybody that wants to join that quest will. And so that party goes out and fucks with the world, and then the next time there's a different quest posted, other people will join that one. So it's just different people doing, like, depending on your schedule, depending on how available you are, how free you are, you can drop in or drop out depending on what's available. So that's why it's structured that way.
You have to specifically kind of structure it in game for that though, and the guild kind of method is the best way to do it.
It is a great way to do that, because they can just
everyone's part of a guild, and they see the postings. They don't have to be involved in it, but they can be if they want to.
Yeah, if you look at a posting,
and the guild is what ties people together.
I like it. It's very cohesive, and they specify when they post like a particular job or a quest. It's like, this is for low level or this is for mid level, and that way people that have the time and want to jump in can, and they can ask questions and stuff about it before they commit to it and stuff like that. It's a nice system. I like it.
This is online. Yeah, this is online. Dragon's Wings is online. How do you regulate IRL? You will have either one DM is like, they go to each of the parties and they DM it to them, or the DMs themselves will, there's multiple DMs, and they agree on they have like a meeting every week or whatever, and they decide, they compare notes kind of thing.
It's doable in IRL, but it's definitely more suited to an online environment.
It can be messy, yes.
Yeah, I mean, it's hard enough getting a group of 5 people together regularly to do something, so. Yeah. I'll rob the old man versus my mountain of baby corpses. Oh my god. Yeah, there's different levels of evil, that's true. Different kinds of evil. So, your favorite campaign you've ever played? Ooh, that's a question for you.
I've mainly DM'd. I've only been a player twice.
What's your favorite that you've DM'd? Like, what were you, since this is a world building stream and you are building these worlds, what are you most proud of that you have done? Like, what do you think was the coolest or the best time that best campaign that you put together?
It was one that actually never got off the ground. Purely because I enjoyed the world building so much. I basically set up everything. I had the map all made. I had all the lore and stuff like that, and I was like, this is a really cool premise. The premise that I had was really cool. The idea was that different races had different amounts of magic in them.
Ooh.
And a couple hundred years ago, technology was discovered that if you harvested the magic out of these people, you convert it into like a crystal, and this crystal was like powered.
Wait, you
So
could
you could use it
harvest magic out of people?
Yes.
Oh.
So it was very ethical of like, well, we could harvest it from people. We can take the magic from, because this is like they're still kind of experimenting with it, right? They don't know like a ethically way to get it.
Mm-hmm.
And it was like, the humans have a base amount of mana or magic in them, so the crystals that they get out of them are like kind of powerful. Dwarves are pretty much inert. They only get like little bits if you harvest a dwarf, but elves are like really strong. You get like a lot of that sort of stuff. And these crystals were used to power like street lamps and airships and even projectile weapons like las guns essentially and shit like that. And it was this big thing. But then because it's sourced ethically weird, like it's like you're fucking killing people to do this. The world kind of split.
Yeah.
And it kind of became like well, we need this for the greater good, so we have technology, so we need to set up the harvesting people and blah blah blah.
Jesus.
Versus what the fuck, you're like killing people. So in the map, I made it different kingdoms. There was different kind of regions and kingdoms, and they each had different kind of stances on them. And like further to the west, they're more like, we don't care, we want magic. So naturally there was less elves and stuff down that way, more dwarves and orcs and that sort of stuff. And on the east there was like a lot more elves, because they're like, yeah, we don't believe in that fuckery, that sort of stuff. And so the premise was, I thought, really fucking cool, but it just never got off the ground.
You know what? I feel like that was influenced a bit by 40K.
I had not got into 40K at that point.
You hadn't? Really?
No.
Because it feels so much like the whole like harvesting of souls for the Emperor kind of thing. Like it's for the greater good, but you're killing people. But we need it, but you're killing people. But that whole vibe, which I like that ethically gray, because people can go in so many different directions with that. Like some people could fully embrace it. Some people could be like, holy shit, that's horrible. Yeah, I like now.
The party started in the east, where everyone's like, yeah, we don't do that. That's kind of really weird. But the idea was that if they ended up traveling further west, into different kingdoms, you'd find, one, there'd be less elves and like tieflings and stuff like that, because in my brain they have more kind of like mana in them.
Yeah, that makes sense.
You'd find more humans and dwarves and orcs and stuff like that. And people would look at you differently. You would be considered more of a commodity the further east you got. And when you got to the capital of the far eastern kingdom, it was basically like we're going to capture you and take your magic.
So that's what they would do. They would literally just capture the people and take it.
Yeah. Think like the political chart where it's like very far left and very far right wing sort of thing. It's like that, but place that on a map. And there's like the town Haven, all far up in the east, that's like protected by like natural mountains and stuff, and that's where pretty much all the elves were.
Just hiding out to avoid getting captured and harvested. Yeah, okay.
They basically made like a bulkhead, and then in the middle there's this big mountain range, and the dwarves are there, and they're like, this is fucking stupid. And they close up their keep, because they're dwarves, and they close up the mountains, so there's no trade route that goes through that area anymore, which just divides the kingdoms more. That sort of stuff.
So, and this actually ties really well into what we're talking about as a whole. So you basically took a concept of people, characters having different levels of magic and how that could be used and harvested, and the ethical dilemma that comes from that, and you built the map around that. You built a safe space for the elves. You built dwarves being like, fuck all of you in the middle. You built like this progressive direction for the world to go from one side to the other with how extreme and how awful it became. And then you sort of like, that was the basis for the story, and it creates so many opportunities for conflict and for discovering things and exploring things and some seriously ethical dilemmas, like some seriously deep like things that players could seriously be challenged by, depending on like if you're in a place where harvesting people for magic is normal and seen as like that's just how things are. It's almost like a Star Trek Prime Directive situation. How much do you fuck with that? Like, are you allowed to fuck with that? Or is it one of those like, when in Rome, you must follow their rules? Or is it a, fuck you, we don't do that, we're not on board with that, and you start, taking swings at people kind of thing? Like, that's a really... Like, did you intend for the players to all sort of be on the same page with whether they were for or against that sort of thing? Or did you want them to have their individual dilemmas over it?
I'm totally fine. I was totally fine with them having their own sort of dilemmas. But because they were all kind of starting in the... I actually have the map here. I actually found the map. Because they were starting in the east in like a pretty like no harvesty kind of town.
Yeah.
I kind of expected them to be a little more, they don't want to do that because let's be honest, presenting it to be like the baddies, they're harvesting people for magic, right?
Yeah.
So I think for the most part, they were all for the whole preservation of life kind of
Okay.
thing.
All right. So you kind of assume that they're going to kind of be on that page. But if you have anybody in the group that's like particularly mercenary or particularly, not attached to the group, like there's opportunity for them to maybe sell out their fellow party members or, not necessarily save them if it comes to that kind of thing. Like is that something that you would be on board with if the players sold each other out, or do you really want them to sort of get along and be a team?
I mean, personally, I'm like, yeah, getting along being a team, but I'm a DM, I just, they want to go off and do something, that's what they do,
Yeah, I guess that's fair. So, I'm sorry, I know that was a huge tangent. If you want to circle back to your actual lesson plan, we should probably do that. But,
Yeah. Let me,
Hi, Trifecta. Hi, Dooku. And Starhop I saw you sneak into.
Here you go. If you want to show this to
Yeah, send me the graphic and I'll pop it in.
just open it as a PNG. I know it's a weird file.
That's fine. Just drop it to me. Open it as a PNG. Oh, okay.
Or a JPEG or an image file. It's the file extension there is one of the map making tools that I'm using.
Open. Oh, okay. Yeah, let me... Oh, this is really cool. Yeah, you guys are going to like this. 1 second. We convert it to a format I can actually put in OBS.
Yeah, I found the documents. I have like a timeline.
A timeline? Of like the history of how it came
the
about?
Yeah.
Ah, yeah. I like that.
There was also you can look on the map there. There's like this big volcano-y kind of area, kind of towards the west.
Hold that
It was legend that one of the gods fell from the heavens and like landed there, and that's why there's this huge volcano.
Oh, I like that.
One of my players was a warlock, and he was being influenced by someone that he doesn't know. And the idea was that that god was still alive in like subterranean thing, like really diminished with power.
Oh, that's really big.
In the yeah, in the like subterranean sort of thing, and like influencing like their decisions and things like that. And they were going to meet them one day, but of course it never actually happened.
Oh, look at that. That's so pretty.
Yeah, so that's the map that I made, and the soulful nation over there on the left-hand side is the one that's like, we're going to harvest people and use them for, lantern and stuff, whereas Haventhorn up there is where the elves hide, basically.
And
so you kind of have it's in between. And
the individual cells of the map represent what? The individual hexagons.
Tiles. I think 2 of those is like a day's travel or something like that. But it was just basically putting a map out there.
Yeah.
That's what I was doing.
But it also gives you a way to tell how long it takes to travel across the space and stuff like
roughly.
that. All right, you guys get a good look at it. Cool. You know what? I can even I can leave that sort of. I'll put it over myself. There we go. That'll do.
Yeah, so they started in Eastern Hold, the city of Tydor. That's like on the coast there, essentially.
Yeah.
So it's kind of like close enough, for the.
Yeah, I like that. That's a really cool map.
I have the synopsis that I was going to give to the players here.
Oh yeah, go ahead and read it. Let's get an example of actual this is actual Lupus world building that happened. So let's go.
So this is what I was going to read to the players on session 1. All living things have traces of magic flowing through them. Some, like tieflings and elves, have a great amount of magic energy through their being. Others, like dwarves and orcs, have very little. It was told thousands of years ago magic was gifted to the world by the god of magic himself when he fell from the heavens. So think like he crashed down onto the world and his kind of like energy went out and gifted people with magic. Years down the line, new technology was unlocked which allowed the ability to harvest magical energy from the blood of any living thing. Technology skyrocketed and great inventions were made. Airships, fireless lanterns, and even magical projectile weapons were invented using the essence of harvested magic users. Wars broke out over the morality of this horrible technology, and many races acting in their own way. More notably, the elves fled to the northeast and created a grand city for those more magically inclined, a safe haven, if you will. From there, slowly but surely, due to the high risk of having no magic users at all, it was voted that harvesting became illegal. More wars were fought over this, as you would expect, but when the dust had settled, most places gave up the harvesting technology in favor for a quote-unquote better world. However, there are still rogue states to the west that to this day use this terrible technology for their own good. Yeah.
Okay. So
that was the premise I was going to.
And you started them in Easternhold.
Yeah, specifically Tydor. There's a little city just underneath the L on Easternhold.
Oh, yeah, I see it. Yeah, I like that. That's a hell of a world to just drop somebody into and be like, all right, go have fun, kids. Like
the Korath clasp there is the dwarves.
Oh, that's the dwarves. Okay.
Yeah. So you can see there's kind of like a path that goes from the Kingdom of Glinth to the Soulful Nation there. Mm-hmm. That was a trade route that they would use, and they would kind of pay a toll to the dwarves to like allow them to get through it. And you notice that there's no other way that the Kingdom of Glinth can easily get to the Soulful Nation and trade. So when the dwarves were like, nah, fuck you, we're going to close everything up, trade between the Soulful Nation and the Kingdom of Glinth basically went to zero.
So is the Soulful Nation just sort of isolated at this point? Like,
they're
nobody
like the
can
only
really...
ones that are still like, we're going to harvest people.
Yeah, so people wouldn't want to go there anyway, but even then, like, do they have any trade at all left? Or is it just like, fuck you, we do what we want, we can...
They have some trade, so they trade with the Sailstrom down at the bottom. And you'll also notice that there are two port cities, one to the top of the Soulful Nation, just near the clasp, and one to the top of Glinth. So they trade via boat.
Oh, okay.
The issue with that, though, is that introduces piracy. So, you know, you've got pirates up there.
Oh my god.
This is the kind of stuff that you think about when,
yeah.
You know.
And again, this is stuff that your players may never encounter in their campaign.
They did never encounter.
Well, but
because
if it had been played out, they still may never have experienced piracy or anything like that. Like they may have stayed entirely on land, and you never would have used that detail. But you, as the DM, have to think of that. You, as the world builder, have to consider all the possible, like everything. And obviously, you can't consider everything, but all the things you could possibly think of them doing. And I hate to say this, but like, put yourself in the mind of your dumbest player and figure out what stupid shit they're probably going to get up to, and then try to account for that, I guess.
Yeah,
like,
exactly, yeah.
Yeah, that's interesting.
No, that's fair.
All right, anyway, if you'd like to get back on your lesson plan.
So we're kind of actually, this is kind of relevant, actually.
Okay.
So I'm now in the section of what are some tricks to help create a believable and enjoyable world for players. And one of the points here that I was going to say is to keep the world flowing.
Okay.
Now, we've talked about how players have control over the world, and they have to sort of impact it somehow. But it's also important not to just allow players to be the only controlling factor.
Okay.
What do I mean by this? Well, I've seen too many worlds built for this sort of stuff where unless the players are in there, in a certain area, nothing changes.
Oh, I see. You want things to be changing with or without their presence. Like things
Pirates.
are evolving. I see what you're getting at. Yeah.
So let's use an example. Let's say the players leave the small town they've been in for a while, and they head north to a mining town. Well, when they arrive to the mining town, they learn that the mine... sorry, there's something outside. When they arrive at the town, they realize that the mine has more or less completely dried up, and the townsfolk are out of the jobs. Okay, that sounds interesting, but let's think about what would happen if that was actually the case. Wouldn't it be more likely that they would have already heard of that mine slowly drying up? Wouldn't they have heard rumors? Or, I mean, they were in the next town over. if the miners can't work, then they need to go somewhere else. Maybe the miners come down into the town that they're in. A good setup would be to have people coming into the town from a mining town asking for work, since the original job of a miner isn't needed right now. Maybe the local blacksmith prices in the region are higher, since the flow of metal is lower because the miners drive up. The premise can be big or small to fit the narrative that you want. You want two kingdoms at war, drop hints of rising tension between them, or mention emissaries, rumors, or whatever. The point is that things are flowing with the players not being there.
Right, and that makes it feel more organic, because it's not like they just sort of wander into a space and it's like, oh no, these two kingdoms are suddenly at war. Like, it's not unexpected. It's a slow burn.
It's not like a video game where you enter an arena and the enemies spawn in.
Yeah.
Those enemies are there and they have been fighting for a while. You know, that sort of stuff.
Yeah. And there's reasons for it. Like, the backstory has been dripped in through passersby and disgruntled ex-miners and stuff like that. So you hear little bits here and there that sort of drop that, which is, that we've talked about before with storytelling, planting versus payoff and trickling in. That the slow burn is that you don't just dump your reader or your listener or your player into a situation without any sort of information about where that came from, or because otherwise, why would they care? To me, this is a matter of caring. Like, if you dump me into a story and there's a bunch of conflict going on, I give zero fucks unless you give me a reason to. So that slow burn is sort of how you get people engrossed in the story, how you get them to give a shit, and then when the time comes, they have the information they need. So, yeah.
Yeah, I should note that it's... sorry, 1 second.
Yeah, it's fine. How you guys doing, chat? You learning anything? I'm learning a lot. I'm learning I'd be a terrible DM.
Okay, whatever. I should note it's important not to just do this for things you expect the players to interact with. So
do it for everything.
I would actually recommend throwing in some stuff out of their way that they might not ever see directly. That is really important. It's important because it makes them feel like there's a living world. I mean, how many times do you hear something on the news, if you watch the news, or you see something on Twitter or something about some country that you're not anywhere near, or some person that you'll never see? It's because we live in a living world with other people doing other things. So it's important to kind of give that feel. This sort of thing can easily be forgiven and ignored without it being too much of an impact on how the world feels. If done right, the players won't even really notice it. So it's the kind of thing that you should strive to do. But if you can't, or if you forget, it's more of the thing that increases the value of something rather than being the only thing of it. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I think it's one of those things, if immersion is done right, you don't really necessarily notice it. If it's done wrong, it's jarring and awkward. So if the world is crafted with a nice organic flow and things just move from one space to the next and everything sort of makes sense in universe because it's all still, the gears are all still turning with or without the players, then it feels natural, and it feels like, it's sort of and I know not all you guys are going to get this, but if you ever go to Disney World, they're masters of immersion, but you don't notice most of it. The landscaping is on point. There's never a piece of trash anywhere. The music changes as you move from area to area. There's background music, but you don't necessarily pick up on it consciously. It's just there. And even the smells, when you walk into the Magic Kingdom for the first time, there are popcorn stands that are literally pumping the smell of popcorn into your face as you walk in, and you don't really realize it. But Walt Disney designed that on purpose because he wanted it to feel like you're walking into an entertainment experience, and he associated the smell of popcorn with that. So you are meant to smell popcorn the minute you enter the theme park. And most people don't even register. It's just they just walk right past it. But mentally, that's putting you in a place of movement and flow and a living world around you that is doing more than just sort of sitting there waiting for you to do stuff to it. So yeah, that sort of thing, that sort of vibe, I think creates a much more rich experience for everybody. Because it's not just what the players are doing. This world exists without them, and they are the ones getting to interact with it. So, yeah, I like that. underground tunnels underground tunnels, the utilidors under the Magic Kingdom, so that you never see somebody who works in Frontierland walking in costume through Tomorrowland, because that would be jarring. That would ruin the immersion for the guests, and you always want to make sure you maintain immersion at all times. So they have secret tunnels to get people where they need to go without ever appearing in the wrong area wearing the wrong outfit. So yeah, secret tunnel
through Disney.
Well, just the Magic Kingdom part. When I worked there, I just took a bus. Yeah, but
we used to just take the bus.
I just took the bus around the back of Epcot. It's pretty lame.
Secret tunnel.
But yeah, like in Game of Thrones, when like as news travels, news gets warped, and information isn't always accurate. And that's something else to consider in an organic world like this. You have a lot of unreliable narrators. Like the people, like the crabby miners that are coming from the next town, are they getting the whole story? Are they, everything's through their perspective? Is it the truth? You know, is it actually what's going on? Like, you don't necessarily know. Like, everybody's viewing things through their own filter and their own lens. And the reliability of the narrator can be very suspicious, you know, it could be very suspect, because it's not like the DM is holding a hand over everything and being like, and now this happens. Like, it's coming through the voices of other people. And that can make it, you know, if you're a paranoid person, it can make you not want to trust a damn thing. But put COVID in a town, I think it already is in like every town, everywhere, forever. What if you made a Vampire Roommate campaign? Vampire Roommate's not D&D or any sort of tabletop thing. That's those adventures will continue under my incredibly tight grip and watchful eye. Yeah. Anyway, please continue.
Players can and will ruin things that you have set up, as we talked about earlier.
Ooh, what is this that you have sent?
That's a high quality version of the map without the kingdom borders.
Oh, I like that.
So you can really zoom in and, yeah.
Yeah, maybe we should post this somewhere for people to play with, or at least look at, because that's pretty. Yeah, I'll put that in one of the Discord channels. Open in browser. Give me. Yeah.
Another trick.
Yeah, tricks.
Is to make the world interactable. Make sure to allow things to be interacted with and have them change in response to what the players do. For example, the players help drive off some bandits from a struggling town. Well, those bandits need to go somewhere and do something to make ends meet. Where is that and what do? You know, they don't just disappear. They have to go somewhere. They don't necessarily need to pop up again in the campaign, but, you know, think about it. This helps to make the characters believe that they are part of a living world and their actions have weight, as little or as small as that is. Additionally, when all is said and done, they can look back at the adventure and see the footprints of their influence. The world needs to adapt and change based on what is happening.
I like that.
So, you know, it's stuff like they burn down a wheat field. Well, a town starves and it's no longer on the map. Congratulations. You know, that sort of stuff where the stuff that they do has meaning. It changes things. It, you know, evolves the world.
And then actions have consequences. Like if they do something really stupid and people suffer for it, they have to live with that.
Yep. Yeah, if they spend their whole campaign being murder hobos, then you know, then they try and convince a local duke that oh yeah, we're here to help. He's gonna be like, I don't think so.
Yeah, and that's exactly. I mean, because that's the thing I think that I would worry about with a lot of these situations is that if they think they can really kind of do no wrong and they're untouchable, outside of, you know, standard combat bullshit, but like they can just fuck with the world and not have that come back on them. Like that's not how it works. Like in real life or in a game, like you have to have consequences for actions. There have to be, again, with the planting versus payoff. If you plant yourself as a murder hobo, the payoff of that is you're going to get not a lot of help from anywhere ever because you suck. So yeah, I think that's important to remember, guys. When you're crafting a world, make sure that there are consequences for your players, even if they don't like it, even if they're, you know, crabby about it. Like just because they can influence the world doesn't mean they have ultimate control over it, and doesn't mean there aren't consequences.
Well, a good story on that is one of these campaigns I was watching. The party saved this village from being burnt down by bandits. And they killed all the bandits, but the town was like basically in shambles, and all the people there were like, shit, where do we go now? Like, what do we do? We have no life. And one of the people from the party gave them a bunch of gold and was like, rebuild your town, but I want a statue of me built in it. And they're like, okay. And they left, and they came back like sessions later, and the town is starting to be rebuilt, and they had they'd carved a marble bust of the guy that gave them the gold to rebuild it.
Jesus Christ.
So it's that sort of stuff where it's like, okay,
Yeah.
because he gave them, you know, this town can rebuild and that sort of stuff.
Did they name the town after him?
I think they did, actually.
I kind of love that. Yeah, actions have consequences, and that was a good action to take, and except for maybe insisting on a statue, that's a little much, but, you know, yeah, it's...
He
I like
showed
that.
up and he's like, this isn't a statue, this is a busk, what the fuck?
Oh, really? Really?
Yeah.
Jesus Christ,
Yeah.
what a piss.
Well, he
out.
was I think he was like a half ogre or a half troll or something like that.
Only
His
a
name was
marble
Tuttigub.
bust? Tuttigub?
Yeah.
I love that. Tuttigub. That's fun to say.
Yeah. Any questions?
So far.
I have one more point to make and then I'm out of notes.
Okay, that's fine, because I have things to say too. So, and questions. I have questions. So yeah, but if anybody has questions, now's a good time.
Another trick I would say is to use a map tool. One of the best and for me most enjoyable ways to build a world is to start with a map. So there you go. There's the map that I made. If you use a map building tool, there are plenty out there, like Campaign Cartographer. That's the one I used to make the map that you're looking at now. And Wondercraft, and so on. For me, it helps to visualize exactly what I'm doing, and you know, you can kind of look at it and be like, it's easier to kind of build off that, for me at least. And I was thinking maybe we could do a stream where we all sit down and we try and build a world.
Ooh, that would be fun, an actual hands-on world building stream. Would you guys be down for something like that? Would you want to help us actually build a world? Would that be cool? Oh, okay, yeah, they
You guys
like
can
that
name
idea.
cities and all that stuff, and I can show you my kind of thought process on, because I do a lot of thinking. My brain doesn't really stop. So it's world building is really fun for me because I just keep asking and answering questions to myself, like, oh, there's a town that lives on a river. Why do they live on the river? Oh, they catch fish. Okay, what sort of fish? You know, and then it just goes on and on. Oh, surely there'll be a big trade for like fishing rods and tackles and stuff like that. Where do they get that from? And it just goes on, and suddenly you just have like 12 pages notes on this random fishing village.
And their incredibly robust economy.
Yeah. In fact, most of those cities on that map there, I have notes on, and I could tell you about if you just point to it. Mostly in Eastern Hold because that's where the party was, but yeah.
Honestly, that's amazing. Like, because it does sort of flow organically for you as the world builder. I like the idea of starting with a map first because it really gives you that visual of what you're dealing with and what things look like, and you can sort of picture, okay, well, this area is more green and this area is more deserty and, you know, stuff like that. And then you can kind of, like you said, you put a town next to a river. Okay, well, maybe it's shipping. They don't fish, they ship because they're a major hub and things pass through. And yeah, and a lot of that draws from, you know, actual history, human history, the development of fertile crescents and riverbeds where people could build towns and actually move goods. So yeah, somebody's knocking on our door and I'm gonna ignore them because I just saw a bunch of guys in like dress shirts and ties with clipboards walk through our grass, and I don't care enough to answer the door. So they looked kind of
Go
culty,
away.
not gonna lie. He keeps knocking though.
Probably Mormons.
Yeah, they're pretty old for Mormons. Mormons are usually a lot younger and have not learned yet to question things like their own world building. Aha, did you see what I did though?
Yeah.
Okay, here's a question that came through before that I missed. Do you ever have a rainy day last resort fully built world that you would use to ease in a new player or a last minute session?
Yeah, the one that you're looking at. I mean, that's never been used before, so.
But did you like ever have, like, was that just keeping in the hopper in case you get a chance to use it? I mean, or is that the kind of thing that you would do? Like, would you have something, do you like world building so much, I guess, that you would just have something that's sort of handy in case you had the opportunity to use it?
The thing with world building, if you do something big enough and detailed enough, like the one that I've got there, after you've made it, if you do need like a rainy day kind of thing, just use the same one and start it in a different city. Because you already have the information there. That's the goal with like building a world, is you build it big enough and detailed enough that you can just drop someone in anywhere and be like, ta-da.
So you don't really need a throwaway world, as he puts it. It's more about just having a world that's big enough and rich enough that you can do throwaway campaigns if you need to in small areas, just little one-offs here and there, and not have it require an entire new world to be built for it.
Yeah. I mean, if you're happy doing world building with, knowing that it's going to be thrown away and stuff like that, by all means. But for me, that's a lot of work for it to just be kind of like thrown away.
Well, especially given the level of detail that we've already talked about, kind of needing in a world like that just in case stuff happens. Yeah, like that's a lot of detail that you may never ever use, but still needs to be done. Because if you don't put that level of work into the world, then it's not going to make for a very good campaign anyway. So, yeah.
Yeah, and there's also pre-made adventures and stuff like that. So if you just want to do like a one shot or something, you can just buy one of the books from Wizard of the Coast. Marine.
Yeah, I'm not touching that grenade. Anyway.
Yeah. And that is the extent of my notes.
Okay.
So we're now off script.
All right.
Next slide, please.
Click.
All right. Any questions?
I actually wanted to talk a little bit about, as a world builder, because I'm coming from the perspective of somebody who, like I said before, I really like to have control. So as far as like the places where I feel like I would trip up, like, so like when you're world building and storytelling, like obviously you have a story in mind. You want them to go down a certain path, even if they don't. Probably, right? Like you're never just putting them in a sandbox and saying go nuts, and you have no plans for this. Like you have a story in mind, right? Like
Sure.
That's okay. Do you have more than one in mind? Do you have a couple of different directions they could go?
Yeah, I mean, that's definitely a way you can do it. You basically, if you want to go down that sort of path, just dangle the hook for a few different things and just kind of see what they go for, Okay. You can have like a quest board.
Yeah, like the guild hall kind of thing.
I doubt there's one quest on that quest board.
That's true.
So there could be a couple on there and just let them pick if that's something that you want to do. Obviously that's a bit more work, but if that's yeah. I mean, there are times where I mean, you can just like there was a story of some guys. There's a great video on it. I think I've shown you the video, but he's telling a story about a group of people that are like, oh yeah, we want to do a D&D session, and the DM's like, cool, I've made this this campaign that you guys can be a part of. I've made this world. I'm like, awesome. So he shows them the map, and they're like, oh, that's really cool. Wait, what's that over there? There's a mountain over there. And they're like, he's like, oh yeah, there's a dragon that lives there, and it's like, protecting a hoard of gold. And like, oh cool, can we be like people that want to go get the gold or something? Like, sure. Yeah, it's that sort of stuff. You present it to them, and then you build off like what they want to do. But that is very sandboxy.
Yeah. So most of the time, you'd rather have like he's like a guild hall with a quest board, and have them have an idea of what they're doing before they set out, kind of thing.
Yeah. So what I did with what I was going to do with that campaign on that map was actually, I think this is one that I did actually. I think I used that map twice. What I had was to kind of start the adventure, to kind of kickstart it, is each of the players were individually invited to go to a museum that was owned by a professor or whatever. And he wanted them to check out these ruins, this dig site that he came across, and he's a little scared of like what's down there or whatever. So that's kind of like what brought everyone together.
Yeah.
And then once they did that, it was kind of like, well, you guys want to stick together and do some missions and stuff like that, and then it just kind of rolls from there. So to have like the initial starting thing, to kind of like bring everyone together and introduce them and all that stuff, and then just kind of let them go from there.
Okay. Yeah, that makes sense. So Chris wants to know, I'm a particularly shy player. Do you have any methods to encourage players to contribute where they might not otherwise do so?
As a DM, I think it is important to kind of like, to try and include as many people as you can.
Yeah.
You don't want like one of your players to feel alienated. Some players just are happy just kind of being there and taking in the experience and stuff like that, and not being like, a speaker for the group or something like that. A good DM, a technique that I would use is to have like an NPC, and have that NPC asking like, oh, Chris's character, what do you think about this? Or, something like that. Or, let's say that you're a rogue or something. Me as a DM, I would present a task that only you can really kind of do, give you a chance to kind of shine and interact and things like that.
Okay, and then that way you also try to keep, like, because there's always going to be, well, not always, but I imagine there's frequently that one player who kind of steamrolls everybody else because they don't have a problem talking and speaking their mind, and since the point, I mean, I feel like ultimately the point of all this, of course, is to give the players a good experience, to have them a good player experience, and sort of like when you read a good book, you want the reader to have a good experience, and you don't want one person to ruin it for everybody else. You don't want anybody to feel left out, like you said. So, like, doing that sort of balancing act as a DM, it feels like kind of a just not insignificant chunk of the job, honestly, to make sure that everybody is having a good time and everybody is feeling like their voices are being heard, or they have the agency, or they, things like that. Like, that feels like there's a certain amount of psychology to it to make sure that there's nobody feeling left behind or left out.
At the end of every session, I always ask the players what they liked and if they didn't like something.
So you sort of like do a little debriefing after to kind of...
Yeah, a little check, and like, they're like, oh, this was really cool. I was like, yeah. Or
interesting.
Like, this day of travel, it felt like the encounters were kind of forced or something. I'm like, okay, cool. And then from that, you only get better. You only improve.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like that's another thing that as a DM, you have to be willing to take that feedback. Like, you cannot be like, well, fuck you, it's my world, and you're just lucky to be here kind of thing. Like, you have to be able to listen to the players when they have legitimate feedback for you.
A fun little thing that I do at the start of the session, rather than me being like, last time, we did, you guys did blah, blah, blah. I ask one of the players.
What happened last time?
I'll sit down and be like, okay, Bree, what happened last time? And then you'll be like, hope I was... One, it makes the players take notes so they can remember and stuff like that. Two, it allows, more interaction, because if I notice a player's being a little not really having the chance to talk or something like that, guess who's going to be telling me what happened last session? And three, it also reinforces what I think the players know. So if they leave something really important out, I can kind of be like, yeah, and also this.
Yeah.
Don't forget that, kind of thing. It shows me what the players are. Yeah, it's a good little trick. And if you're thinking of DMing, I would recommend doing something like that.
Oh, for sure. Yeah, because I think for a lot of people, like, you get that dichotomy where on the one hand, you've put all this blood, sweat, and tears into this world that you have crafted. And if you've done it right, it's like this map. It's very thorough. It's got rich lore. It's a perfect little microcosm for your players to explore. But if they come back with feedback about the world or about whatever, I could see why it would be difficult maybe to hear any sort of negative feedback about this thing that you've put so much of yourself into. And I could see how, as a DM, that could be very challenging to sort of accept that feedback and understand that, like, they're trying to make it a good experience too, and it can't all be one-sided, and you can't be tone deaf to their concerns. And if they have concerns, that's even though you've created this world, it's still organic. It's not entirely yours. You don't have all that control over it, and that I imagine would be difficult, because I mean, like anyone else, I don't super love criticism. Like, I'll take it, but there's always a voice in my head that goes, "Fuck you! What do you know?" It's like, no, they've got valid concerns. Let's hear them out. But my knee jerk is always to be like, "Nah, it's mine. You can't touch it." So that would be, I think, very challenging for someone like me.
Yeah, and that's just kind of part of it. It's different from writing a story where everything's presented there and stuff, and it's, you know, because the players are part of it, they feel a lot more for it.
Yeah.
They're a lot more passionate about it. And if they feel like something is, you know, weird or out of place, it will hit them harder than,
Yeah.
you know, reading a book, because, you know, and that's a double-edged sword. It's one of those double-edged swords that I was talking about.
I get that. And actually, Vod's question kind of dovetails in with something I was going to ask about problem players. So handling the OP character or rules lawyer that really isn't so much about making it fun, but instead is about the I'm right thing. Like, how are there any tips for tactfully handling people who go a little too hard into that aspect, or who don't seem to be in it for the fun of the group, or more about, you know, being right?
Rocks fall and you die. No. So that's called, that's traditionally what the phrase metagaming is, right? So a metagamer is someone who will pick, you know, their class with the intention of making them the strongest. They'll be like, oh, I'm going to use this weapon because it does more damage, and, you know, not because, oh, my character would use this weapon. Or
They want to
power
win.
gaming,
They want to
metagaming or
win
power
the
gaming.
game as opposed
They
to
want to
just
win the game.
Yeah.
And that's something that needs, it's because, you know, you're used to video games and things like that, where you want to be stronger and you want to be the hero and things like that. And it's hard
Yeah.
because D&D isn't usually a game about becoming the strongest. It's a game about telling a story.
Yeah.
And
And
that's,
having adventures together. Yeah. Not
Um,
winning. There's nothing to
and
win,
there are,
really.
Yeah, there are creative ways to go about it, but you know, like the guy who was trying to loot everything, making it clear that it's kind of pointless. You know, like you don't really get much money for it, or, you know, throwing in a cursed item or something, like little things like that. In terms of rules lawyering, a DM can't remember everything like off the top of their head. I certainly cannot. I don't know a lot of the rules of the game. So if people are like, well, sorry, actually, my spell is, you know, it isn't on touch. And sometimes, you know, it's good. It's good to have someone who can, you know, they know enough to kind of tell you when you're wrong, and you can learn and evolve from there. But there are times where players will really hard rules lawyer to try and be the strongest, you know, be the best, or like get out of situations or something like that. And those are the times where you have to put your foot down and say, look, I'm the DM. This is how it's going to handle. If you don't like it, then, you know.
Okay. So, I mean, at the end of the day, like, yes and is great, but, like, yes but starts to become too much. Like, you don't want too much confrontation. You don't want too much conflict, or one person just sort of running roughshod over everybody else, or anything like that. Like, I mean, and I imagine it's a fine line to walk, because you don't want to tank the whole team over one person being a shit. But, like, if that one person is being ridiculously toxic or whatever, and not just, like, for being the strongest or whatever, but you also get the people who, you know, try to steamroll everybody else into certain actions, or who try to, like, force romantic subplots, or who try to make items do things they're not made for, because let's just see if this works, kind of thing. Like, to a degree that's ridiculous, as opposed to just once in a while kind of thing. Like, how much, like, at one point do you just decide, fuck it, this isn't worth it? Like, is there a line there?
Yeah, I think that depends on who you are, and like you've been saying, the main thing is to make sure everyone's having fun. And if you're noticing that your players are not having fun because of this one person, you know, it's you're the DM.
Yeah.
You're running it. It's up to you to either take that person aside and be like, hey, look, you know, this is kind of not what we're going for. Talk to them about it, obviously, but if they don't do it, then you're the DM. Kick them out.
Yeah.
You're running this show. Don't let someone steamroll you.
Yeah.
There are hundreds of videos out on YouTube on how to deal, and like stories of just problem players, and, you know, how to deal with them and things like that. You have to be able to just kind of put your foot down and be like, look, priority of everyone having a good time is more of a priority than you being the strongest or you being right all the time. So
yeah, because I mean, it is such a fine line, because on the one hand, you know, you want them to be able to have agency and do what they want, but on the other hand, you have to maintain that control as the DM, as the world builder, as, you know, the ultimate storyteller, to make sure that the story being told is a good one and isn't some asshole being an asshole. So yeah, and that's, to me, again, as someone who likes control but doesn't love conflict, that would be a struggle for me, I think, as well. If somebody was not playing well with others, yeah, I would definitely struggle with that.
I've heard stories of, because not every D&D group is a group of friends. Sometimes you have like pickup games and stuff like that, especially at like local gaming things.
Yeah.
And there have been stories of like DMs who, you know, they're like, because you always need DMs. There's never enough DMs. Everyone wants to be a player. No one wants to be a DM, because DMing's
it's hard.
difficult. It's hard. There have been stories of like where they're like, they put themselves up and like, look, I'm happy to run a game or whatever if anyone's around, and they get like a group of like randoms, and they just get like the weirdest fucking people. There was like one where someone was basically making themselves to be a furry.
Oh God.
They made themselves a tabaxi and they talk like this the entire time.
Oh.
And not in like the haha funny way, a genuine,
in the
like,
cringe way. Yeah.
a genuine cringe way. And unfortunately, I think that what you will find is there are like, you know, there's like female players or lady players, and some of the guys that play these games in that sort of situation don't really know how to talk to girls or be around girls. And I've heard stories about them trying to force their character to get it on with the girl's character, and that is not okay. And
No.
as the DM, you have to be like, no, we're not doing this. Like, pull them aside or kick them out, especially if they're making someone else uncomfortable.
Yeah. Yeah, that just becomes kind of borderline assaulty at that point. Like, if you come to play a game and you're just constantly having to fend off the advances of some neckbeard who doesn't understand how to talk to people, like, yeah, that would be the opposite of fun on every level.
I think it got to the point where he was like casting suggestion.
Oh
like,
my
spells
God, really?
To try and brainwash. Yeah, and I think that's when the DM was like, you know what? No, like, yeah.
Oh, that's disgusting.
Yeah, it's
so rapey. I hate that.
Yes, I have heard some fucking horror stories.
Oh God, that's awful. Yeah, no, don't do that, guys. And DMs, don't let your players do that, please, for the love of God. And also bear in mind that some people are very conflict avoidant. If somebody was being, you know, shitty in a game that I was in, it would take a lot for me to speak up, but I would probably be visibly uncomfortable. So like I would be saying things, and like a lot of people aren't going to be able to flat out put their hand on someone's face and say, stop that, shame on you, you know, but they may be like, okay, haha, let's do something else. Or, you know, maybe my character's going to go off and do this now because I'm not super comfortable. Watch for cues like that. Like, you really have to be in tune with your players and make sure you're not missing anything where somebody is just ridiculously uncomfortable, but they're not even comfortable saying something about it because they don't want to hurt the team or they don't want to hurt the experience for anybody. So they're just sort of sucking it up. Like, try to make sure that doesn't happen.
As the DM, this is your responsibility.
Yeah.
It obviously, and as a character too, as a player, speak up, or if you don't feel comfortable speaking up, like in public or in front of the group, pull the DM to the side, like after a session or something, like, look, I'm not okay with this. And you as the DM have to be okay with handling that.
Yeah.
Your job is to make sure everyone is having fun. And if there is a problem player in that group, power gaming, or being rapey, or being cringe, or like constantly taking it out of the game. If anyone is in there making everyone else feel uncomfortable, that is your responsibility to handle.
Yes, you can't just pass that off. Like, that's, again, getting back to the overarching theme of this, of the world building. This is your world, and that includes the people in it. And even though they have agency to a point, the buck stops with you, like 100%.
And I guarantee you, if you don't handle it, people will leave, and it will just be you and that creepy player. So you don't want that.
Yeah, no, and you're right, Twisted. The whole "it's just a game" is bullshit.
Not an excuse.
Yeah, there's never an excuse for that sort of behavior.
If someone's feeling uncomfortable, even if it's in character or out of character, it's not a fucking excuse.
Yeah, it's not okay. And even if it tanks the team, even if it's like, well, we can't do these things anymore, we can't have nice things. Like, it's better than somebody sitting there and suffering every week or whatever. Yeah, it's.
Yep.
And that, again, that would be difficult for somebody who's conflict avoidant to have to be like, all right, I'm in charge here. I'm the DM, and I'm here to tell you, you've got to leave. Like,
I am the DM.
I am the DM. No, exactly. But that, again, that would be hard for me. Telling somebody to fuck off because they are toxic would be difficult for me. I feel like I could do it, but like, I would probably get the flop sweats or something doing it. Like, that's conflict and it makes me uncomfortable. But you still have to do those sort of things if this is your world and you are running it. Like, it's important. Just look out for your players. Make sure they're having a good experience all the way around, from the world building to the interactions with each other.
When you become a DM and people become your players, there's an unspoken agreement that you are going to try and show them a good time and you're going to have their best interests at heart. And they are hopefully going to trust you to do that.
Yeah.
So you don't want to break that trust of your players.
Yeah, that's a good way to think of it. Like, the players are absolutely trusting you as the DM to handle all of this shit for them so that they can have a good experience, which is probably why so few people want to DM, because it is a lot of work. Like, it's a ridiculous amount of work, not just for the world building, but the interpersonal stuff. So, yeah, so more power to you. If you guys in chat are DMs, more power to you. You're heroes. Like, keep up the good work kind of thing. But, yeah, I don't know. As much as I love world building, I'm not sure it's something I could ever do, to actually try to herd cats in this manner. Like,
On a side note, if you want to just build a world for D&D and never have to DM, it's fun. World building's fun.
Well, I mean, that's what I do with my audios. I build worlds every week. I have a great time with it. And then I have to figure out how to convey that to people in one-sided dialogue. But yeah, I in my head, these are very rich, complex worlds that nobody's ever going to see.
I love it because, like, I'll set the map up and I'll put things out there and then I'll go away and do something else. And in my head, I'm like, ooh, and then this, and then this, and then this. And
yeah.
then, and then I can come back to it later and add, and then you suddenly have this huge, deep thing that.
Yeah, this rich story, this rich lore. And actually, like, Maple, if you're still here, Maple, you gave me an opportunity to put some of that out there when you were asking me about backstory for characters like Calix, because I hadn't put those things in the audios. They were all in my head. Like, I knew Calix's backstory, but nobody else did because they hadn't come up yet. And you were like, tell me more about this guy. And I was able to basically type out this massive wall of text to be like, all right, here's what's going on with Calix, and just dump that lore on you. And you're like, okay, so now you can play the character better, but also, like, it lets me be like, and here's this, and here's this, and here's this, and here's all this stuff that I haven't gotten to tell anybody yet. So yeah, it's fun. It's a fun way to dump that information and have, because it all exists in my head. Like, all of the stories, all of the worlds, they're in there, but I can't always get them out because I don't get to make maps like this. I don't get to. Man, maybe I should. It'd be fun. Is there a D&D world subreddit, just like audio role plays? Probably. There's subreddits for everything. Honestly, like, there's probably a place you can go share world building and storytelling and whatever campaigns you've come up with. Like, if there isn't one, you can make one. You can make a subreddit right now. So yeah. So you guys, if you have any other questions, now is definitely the time. Let me check and see my notes. I was kind of keeping track of different pitfalls that could, since we're talking about DMs and world building specifically, the kinds of things that could become obstacles for a DM. Because thinking of myself, the things that would bug me. So, like, not being thorough enough in the world building is a major pitfall, which I don't think most of us would have a problem with. But then, like, the other flip side of that is being so in love with someone's own world building that you try to force in details where the players don't need them. That I feel like I would probably struggle with a little bit, because if I put the effort into the world, I want people to experience it. And like you said, a lot of that stuff may never come up. They may never meet the pirates. They may never go to the fishing village. But if they do, you want that information to be ready. And yeah. I would be like, hey, there's this fishing village over here you guys should definitely check out.
I get enough satisfaction of it just being there.
Just existing.
For me personally, like, even, because I enjoy creating a world like that so much that if players don't show up to it, that's cool. I know it's there.
That's true. That's fair. And like you said, you can reuse these worlds too if you decide to start a campaign in an area that they haven't been to before. Yeah, absolutely, go for it.
Yeah, you can, and it can come up later. It can, next time you do a campaign, or if you really want them to come to a place, you can make it happen. You are the DM. Have them be fucking kidnapped or something and taken there, If you want them to see something, you can make it happen.
That kind of actually dovetails again into one of the things I was going to ask you about. What is your stance on breaking the in-universe rules? Once you've established your in-universe rules, and under what circumstances are you comfortable with those rules being broken?
Elaborate.
Well, so for example, like you were talking about the magic harvesting thing. And, let's say you have a player character who wants to sort of get outside of that and be like, oh, but this particular elf has so much magic that, they can't possibly harvest. They don't have the equipment to harvest it. Or this particular elf has no magic. And, it's just like something like that where like you've established these rules, you've established these guidelines, and somebody wants to step outside of those and create a situation in which those things do not apply for whatever reason. Either they just want to have more control or something like that. Like, how do you feel about that sort of rule breaking in universe?
It can be fine. It can be good. Because you don't want everything to be uniformed and the same, and everything to fall into it. It can be a slippery slope though. You don't want god characters or characters that are just so out of the way that it's just kind of weird. If that's the case, then play a different campaign.
Yeah.
If you don't want your these you sit down and you're like, okay guys, these are the rules of the campaign. And they say, well, I don't want to be able to be harvested. You that's kind of like, well, play a different campaign.
But that's the rules. Yeah. Like in this campaign, that harvesting is the point. So yeah. And especially if they try to pull that shit like partway through, like they accept the rules at the start, but then partway through it's like, oh, suddenly they've discovered that my character has so much magic they can't be harvested. Like you'd absolutely not be down for something like that.
Sorry, say again. I was reading a message.
No, it's fine. Just like it's especially egregious if they agree to the rules up front, but then like partway through the campaign they try to change them. Like to suddenly be like, oh well, now that I've done this, now I'm too powerful for them to harvest, kind of thing. Like you're not okay with that sort of like on the fly rule breaking either. No. Okay.
Especially because you have a character sheet that lines, that's your contract of this is what's happening. This is my character. These are the rules that I'm going to play my character to and sort of stuff. And to kind of, to kind of go off base, it's a little, make a new character or play a different campaign kind of thing.
Yeah. So, Vod, in your experience, it's more about people just not being aware of something and then they didn't realize, and then to them it seemed like rule breaking, but they just didn't understand the rules. Is that kind of what you're getting at? Because that's another thing, too, I think that falls on the DM is making sure that everybody understands what the mechanics are, what the rules are, how this universe works before they go into it. Otherwise, there would be, I can imagine, a lot of confusion. A 40-year campaign. That's a good question. What do you consider to be a nice campaign length? Like, I know some of these campaigns, they go session after session after session, and it's like dozens of sessions later, they finally wrap something up. Like, what do you feel like is a healthy campaign?
Right up until people stop enjoying it.
So they can just go forever?
Yeah, I mean, it could go forever. If people are having fun and enjoying it, there's no reason to stop. I will say, though, when all of your characters are like, level 20 and they've fought like everything, it can be a bit much. So, maybe make a new campaign and have them make new characters.
Yeah, okay. So maybe if they just get to the point where it's not challenging anymore and they've kind of done everything. Yeah, okay, that makes sense. All right, Vod, I see what you're getting at. You don't want to be jumping sharks, essentially. Yeah, and just like...
Especially if you're doing it for like, if you're really in depth with the story of the world or the characters. If every single character's had their personal story kind of wrapped up in a neat little bow,
they've all had their satisfying arc. They've all gotten to experience all these different things. They've all leveled to this ridiculous level where really nothing challenges them anymore.
You don't want to get to the point where people feel like it's a grind or a chore.
Yeah. Okay. And what is your feeling about, like, obviously combat is important and character development is important. So when you think of like the balance between like combat missions and shopping missions, like how do you what do you think is a good balance for stuff like that?
You'll feel it with whatever tone you've kind of set for the campaign. If you're in a campaign where it's like, there's a lot of kingdoms at war, then there's probably going to be a bit more combat. I like to have a little bit of combat in each of my sessions.
Okay.
When I DM them, but I've also been a player where there's not been any combat and it's just been dialogue, and that's totally fine too. That's one of the things I ask my players at the end of the session. I'm like, hey, would you guys like more combat, or would you prefer more roleplay stuff? I'll just ask them. And if they are more into the like political intrigue and that sort of stuff, I'll do more of that. If they're like, I just want to fucking smash an ice troll, I can do that too,
Yeah. So, I mean, again, it gets back to getting the feedback from the players and making sure that you're delivering the experience that's good for them, basically, within your universe.
See how your players are doing every so often. And, adjust accordingly.
I like that.
If they're not having fun, then figure out why, and,
Which type of smash? The combat kind, smartass. Nice try.
It's the bard.
No, there's no bard in this party. Shut up. God damn it. All right, last chance for questions, guys, because we're going to wrap up here pretty soon. It's been a couple of hours. We have been meandering through this, and I've learned a lot. Like, I've learned a lot of reasons why I probably make a terrible DM, but I've certainly learned a lot. But I kind of want to make a world, actually. Looking at your map makes me want to make a world. So
we can do that. We can do a stream where we all sit down and...
Yeah, we should definitely do that. We should definitely have a world building stream where you guys are actually contributing. And
I'm actually installing the world building software now.
Favorite character class? Oh, that's a question for you.
I like blood hunters. They're pretty fun. That's not a traditional class, though. If we're talking traditional class, I like rogues. I always kind of like rogues.
Yeah, you do.
That's just my style.
Hush, hush, hush. I like clerics. So far, I like clerics anyway.
Clerics are fun.
When you accidentally luck into a super overpowered cleric because you don't know what you're doing. Yeah, that's fun.
Yep.
Is it worth pouring money into a physical map? Like actually printing out, like paying to print out the map that you build online kind of thing? Or like, if you're doing IRL sessions, I imagine a map would be helpful.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, if you want to like print it out or something like that, if people are into it, look, if you're only gonna have like one session or something and you spend like $400 on this really, fancy map or something like that, maybe not. For me, like, yeah, if you're IRL, it's probably easier. Maps do help. I wouldn't make this huge, A1 poster-sized map for, something that if you don't think it's gonna do well. If you've been playing a session for a while, something that I found is really fun is to get like the map like commissioned by, like a cartographer or like someone, an artist or something like that, and like have it done in like the style of Lord of the Rings or something like that, and then that can look like a really cool piece of art.
That sounds amazing. By Elf have a good one. You know what you could also do is you could make that available to the players when the campaign ends. They could all like get a copy of it or something.
Yep.
That'd be really cool. Yeah, that sounds amazing. And again, if you worry about, I can't draw or whatever, like that's what these map builders are for. That's what these tools exist for.
You guys, I can't draw for shit, and you guys are gonna see how easy it is to make a world.
We're definitely gonna do a world building stream then, because I want to see how this shit works too. Because I like to dick around with markers, but I don't think I could draw a map remotely at a level that would be any good to look at for any particular reason. So, campaign merch store. You want this map on your wall, Vod? You want the Eastern Hold and Kingdom of Glint and all that on your wall?
The world of Anyaz.
Anyaz? That's the name of it?
Anyaz.
Anyaz. Yeah. I like that. I like painting stuff like figurines and props. Yeah.
All right, we'll do our session where we make a map.
Yes.
And then if people want to draw it and turn it into something cool, and we could sell it as like a poster or something. How about that?
That's a cool idea. Yeah, if you guys want to help us do a world building stream in a couple of weeks and, put together something cool, if one of you wants to take a step at making it look like a cool official map, we will absolutely put it in the merch store. Because you guys will have made that, and that would be pretty goddamn cool. So, yeah, we are on board with that. That work for you guys? Good. Excellent. All right, on that note, I think we should probably wrap it up and go eat something. So everybody say thank you so much to Lupus for coming and sharing his incredible expertise in D&D and DMing and world building and all that stuff. This is the whole area that I am completely in the dark about. And I was very, very grateful that he was willing to make the time to come share this with us, because I could never speak to this sort of thing. And his experience is incredibly significant. So we will definitely schedule a stream for all of us to get together and work on a map. And Lupus, I will talk to you in a minute. Everybody say bye, Lupus.
Bye, everyone. Thanks for listening. All
right, guys. On that note, I think tomorrow we have a chill stream planned is the next thing. And if you guys are liking these telling tales and weaving world streams, definitely please let me know. I'll post the VOD over on the gaming channel probably in the next day or two. And if you have ideas for future topics that you would like us to touch on for D&D or story writing, book writing, script writing, all those things, storytelling, world building, mechanics, specifics, big picture stuff, whatever is sort of tickling your brain about what you struggle with when you come to world building and storytelling, please, you can drop it on the Discord and Inspiration Point, or you can just drop me a DM, and we will do our best to get to it. So yeah. In the meantime, as always, you guys, be good. I'll talk to you soon.